And good afternoon to everybody. I'm John Meyer. I'm the president of PAC, and welcome to the opening interview of our 15-16 season of My Life in Art. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. We are in Prescott Center for the Arts Stage 2 Theater. Behind me is part of the set for Fool for Love, which will open October 1st and run through the 18th. And then there's a concert, the first concert of the season, October 11th, is Peter, Paul, and Mary Remembered. And so that will be also on the main stage. So we will interview our guest for about 40-45 minutes, and then we'll throw open questions to the floor if anyone would like to do that. And we are, for the first time, recording and broadcasting our interview, and we're going to be doing that with Access 13. I believe it's channel 64 on your digital television stations. So we hope that if you can't be here with us, you'll watch us on TV, and someday come on down and join us as well. That would be a lot of fun. So our first guest of the 15-16 season is an actor, director, and teacher. He spent a good deal of time in New York doing both stage, film, and television. He was the drama instructor at Bradshaw Mountain High School for 5 years before retiring, and he has done several shows with PCA, and we love to have him here. He will be appearing in The Tempest out at Argo Santi the weekend of the 25th through 25th, 26th, 27th out there, so go see him. We got some great other actors in that production as well. Please welcome our first guest, Jim Pyduck.
Howdy, man.
Oh. So, this tends to be the first question I ask everybody. Very simple question, don't get rattled. Where were you born? And if different than where you were born, where did you grow up?
Born and raised in Philadelphia. I wish I was Italian-born, Italian-bred, but I wasn't.
That's might be TMI, but okay.
Yeah. Working class part of Philadelphia called South Philly.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like Southie, Boston,
right. Okay.
Very similar. And then in 1981, I moved to New York City, which is not that far away, but,
no, not at all.
But light years away as far as a different place.
Right, right.
And
so Phillies, Eagles?
Eagles, yeah, lost yesterday, but that's okay.
Okay.
Avid fans, you know.
Oh, yes.
The other thing about Philly that I really liked was music. You know, there are a lot of like local bands,
mm-hmm.
and people would just, you know, go all over the place, myself included, as you know, a young
mm-hmm.
man going out to see different bands that
right.
were Philly-based. You know, one of the big ones was Hall & Oates.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Did you ever study music?
No.
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 Okay.
No.
So how long have you been in Prescott, and what was the reason for moving here?
I guess 7 or 8 years now. I'm losing count because I'm like really old now. But,
I know the feeling.
One of my last stops was Bangor, Maine, mm-hmm. and that didn't quite work out.
And what were you doing there?
I worked, there was a place called $10 Theater,
mm-hmm.
and they did Shakespeare in the park and stuff like that, and I worked there with them and taught a little bit there. That's where I got my feet wet teaching. Mm-hmm. I thought I'd just be able to teach, but it was a long slog to get certification and
right.
all that stuff. But I just started sending out resumes and pictures on the internet, not pictures, but resumes mm-hmm. On the internet to teach, because by that time I had gotten my certification mm-hmm. to teach drama. And I felt really lucky. Bradshaw Mountain High School, they called me, and I had 2 interviews over the phone mm-hmm. with them. And then they said, come on out, we want you to teach. So I was excited, and I jumped in my car and drove, you know, 6 million
that was
miles.
Around the world a couple of times. It's a circuitous route.
Had all my Motel 6s all mapped out all the way down, and that was pretty scary.
Right.
And got here, and you know, all the stuff, you know, I've been really blessed that I'm hard. I get Taurus, and I'm hard-headed, mm-hmm. you know, and I found what I wanted to do, and it was theater, in spite of all the, warnings I got from my parents and stuff like that.
Right.
So, but I've been able to work in theater most of my life, and then to be able to teach at high school, it was the most rewarding time of my life. Right. I mean, the things that came back to me from watching those kids, their eyes light up, things that, we've old crusty guys like me anyway, have known for eons, and then they don't know about it.
Right.
And you kind of like tell them about it, and they're, whoa, this was really exciting for me. More than anything else. I think,
And when did you arrive in Preston?
2008, right before
okay.
my beautiful, wonderful President Obama got elected. And worked there and just retired. I worked 5 years.
Okay,
So,
right.
like I said, I'm losing track of.
Yeah.
Once you retire, I don't know if anybody out there is, it's just like one long vacation.
Yeah, because I had a similar situation, but a year later. I came out here in November of '09. Also had a phone interview first. They did fly me out, to do the live interview, and then they offered me the position. But yeah, so I drove from Florida right across I-10, right up here, and so had that as well. What was your first significant exposure to art?
Well, let me just tell you, I don't know,
Yeah.
we got some time,
Oh
so I
yeah,
can tell you.
sure. We're not going anywhere.
Yeah. You got a couple of minutes?
I got
this.
a couple.
I got drafted during the Vietnam War.
Wow.
So I did 2 years of that. But when I came out, I hear other people say this, and I love to hear other people say it because it feels like I'm not that crazy, that I always felt there was something a little bit different going on. And as I look back,
Different in Vietnam?
No, inside
gotcha.
of me,
Okay.
yeah. Like I just didn't quite feel like I fit in a lot of places, but looking back, I can see more clearly, but at the time it was very confusing, and what I look back on was that I feel that I've always had this artist living inside of me, and it was looking for a vehicle, and I didn't know what that was. So when I was in the Army, I started to draw with pastels and stuff like that. So I came out of the Army, and I was in from 1966 to 68. So I'm out at the end of 1968 into 69 when this explosion was happening with the hippie generation. Yeah.
Right.
So I went to one of the best art schools in the world, I think, Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts. I didn't know that, but now I found out later. And I was working there, and I'm looking around, and I went, oh my God, I'm so out of my depth here. I just had no business being there because people were so good. And I left that. So then we got all this stuff happening with bands, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. And every young guy I knew, including myself, wanted to be in a band,
Right.
But I couldn't play an instrument. So I bought a guitar and started to learn how to play the guitar. And I couldn't learn fast enough because you had to press these things down to be able to make them. And I took the guitar and I smashed it against the wall.
Oh man.
Because I was frustrated that it wouldn't work for me, I wasn't just that I wouldn't
Yeah,
apply
I had
myself.
the same experience trying to learn how to tap dance. Yeah, I played a.
So you
I
threw your feet away.
I threw my shoes out into the house. No, I did some running back in football in high school, but my coordination stopped right there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I could make the cuts and all that, but man, couldn't do a time step.
Well, then I had that happen, and 2 weeks later I went and bought another guitar.
Okay.
Same thing happened. I was trying to press it,
Right.
and sounds ridiculous, but I smashed that
my.
guitar too.
Wow.
Because I also had anger issues going on, I think,
Yeah, maybe.
So the second guitar went, and I was working, I called it the land of the dead. I was working in a place that had cubicles and office, and again, out of my depth because
Right.
it was way back in computers before they even had the computer chips,
Sure.
And a guy I was working with said he was going to go to an acting class. And do I want to come with him? And I just looked at him like he was crazy. I know. And he said, well, I'll buy beers after. And I said, okay, that had some incentive,
Right.
But talking about the art thing, the artist, I went to that class, And part of the first class was each one of us had to get up on stage and say, so I can't remember what it was, but I do remember getting up on that stage and I found it. I mean, that was my vehicle. And that was 1973, I think, or 72, and I never left.
Nice.
I mean, I went to that class, and then they were auditioning for, I feel like I'm talking too much.
No, not at all. You're the guest. You're supposed to talk.
Yeah, well,
You're
okay.
doing it right.
But these are things I haven't thought of in
No, that's okay.
so many decades. But I was leaving the class, and I knew that I just loved it. I just loved it. It was something I never would see myself doing, you know. Anyway, there was a guy who was in the class, who was an Italian guy, he was a South Philly guy, and he was an opera singer.
Oh.
And opera singers have this like stiffness about them, and he just wanted to learn how to move.
Oh,
you
interesting.
Know, as an, just how to turn his neck without.
Right.
So, and his name was Tony, and we're leaving, and the last class, the woman said, "We're auditioning for Skin of Our Teeth, and there are 33 roles.
Wow.
So we'd ask you to stick around and audition."
Right.
And man, I wanted to do that so badly, but I was petrified.
Oh, I bet.
So I left, and I never forget this. I'm in the parking lot with Tony, and I said, "Oh man, Tony, you know, I would love to go back. I would love to audition for that thing." But he said, "Hey, get back in there." So get back in there. It was almost like he was going to hit me if I didn't do it.
Pull a gun out or something.
So I went back in, and I got a part with one line.
Nice.
And it was it. You know, the next play, I got the lead in, you know, and I just was there forever. You know.
Nice.
So I worked 6 years at that theater, like
Very
doing
nice.
everything. That was my basic training, you know.
Very good. So expand on that a little bit. I suspect there was some education in there.
Yeah.
And then also going back, what was your public school, college?
Yeah, I went to parochial school, you know, Catholic school,
Oh, okay.
and Catholic high school, all boys.
That must have been a joy.
Yeah, and you know, that was one of the things in high school. We didn't have a drama. There was no drama. But what they did have, when I used to tell my kids this, because a lot of, you know, when I was teaching high school, because, you know, most of them were frightened, you know, about, as soon as they saw that stage, they
Yes.
were like, you know, intimidated. And I would tell them the story, and it's true, you know, that we didn't have a drama department, but we did, in English, and I think they still do it, we had to give a speech, you know.
Oh, okay.
And I was making plans to run away from home before I would get up there in front of them.
Yes.
I'm dead serious, and give that speech,
Right,
you know.
right.
And then I wound up spending my whole life in theater, you know. So I have, you know, a lot of us, myself included, have no idea what, if I just stay a little bit open,
Right.
that what's going to come,
Right.
you know, to me. So that was that. But then I, you know, later moved to New York in 1981 and took a ton of classes up there.
Right.
You know, I mean.
And I believe you worked with the likes of, or under the likes of Sandy Dennis, Estelle
Sandy
Parsons.
Dennis,
Tell us a
she's
little
passed
bit
away
about
now.
that.
Yeah, she was a terrific teacher. One of the things, I don't know how it is now, but that was 1981. And there was a place called HB Studios.
Yes.
And it was Herbert Berghoff
Right.
and Uta Hagen.
Right.
And they, you know, the mentality, you know, seems so foreign now, but they knew that actors were struggling. You know, I mean, you had to find a job that, you know, they wanted you to be there,
Right.
and then you had to be able to sneak away and do auditions and
Right.
stuff like that. And you're not making a lot of money. You got to pay rent. You have to do all this stuff, and then pursue a career.
Right.
You know, so they made it very, very inexpensive.
Oh, good.
You know,
Awesome.
and a lot of actors who were there, Sandy Dennis being one of them. Herbert Berghoff was another guy that I said. It was inexpensive, but you know, it was great teaching. It was people like who were in between jobs on Broadway. They were teaching.
Wow.
You know, Estelle Parsons was another one. I mean, she wasn't there, but
Right.
she had her own classes. But I took classes with her. She was terrific.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, these are seasoned people that I worked with, and got this whole different insight into. One of my difficult things was, to me, you know, naive, was that if you're an artist and if you have some talent, if you're an actor and you have some talent,
Right.
you're going to be successful.
Sure.
You know, but that's not how it worked.
No.
You know, I mean, it was just, from these people like Sandy Dennis and Estelle Parsons, I learned that it's show, business. You know, it's the film
Yes.
industry.
Yes, absolutely.
And I wasn't very good at that second part of either one of those.
No, a lot of us are not.
Yeah, yeah. But it helped me to be a little more realistic about it, you know.
So was it either of the two of them? Where did you find your process? Because sometimes there's that magical moment where either a teacher gives that, you know, over some work over time, just kind of gives you something that really works for you, or you get an isolated incident that just, you know, lets you move forward.
Well, I had, you know, it's interesting how things work. I always, from the very beginning, worked really big, you know, like way too big,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And I worked more or less, and I still do, I'm doing a play now and I've done the same thing, working from the outside in, you know. And the time I was in New York was the early 80s, and Yale drama was the thing.
Yes.
You know, if you graduated from Yale drama, you were working, you know. So I worked with some people. I worked with one guy in particular who was a Yale drama graduate. And we're doing this play together, and they work just the opposite. It's internal.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, in my opinion, it's very selfish, you know, because theater, you know, is a give and take thing. It's a collaborative effort, you know. And this guy, I'm doing my big, and he's going, well, I don't know what? You know, he's giving me his line, my line. So, and at one point, you know, we almost got into fisticuffs on stage because he, in his process, it was a play about a bunch of young guys called Every Mother's Son. Okay. And he took a corn muffin and shoved it in my ear, you know.
Whoa.
And you know,
and obviously you did not know he was going to do
which
that.
is not, which is a no-no. On stage, you do things, and spontaneity is a great thing.
Right.
But when you're physically doing something with another actor, it's really protocols to say, I'm going to. You don't have to always say exactly what it is, but are you okay if I do something? Right. You know. Right. That's not been part of the process so far. But man, and then I got all that corn muffin stuck on my ear, and then he's going. I can't, so it wasn't.
Is this the name of someone we would recognize?
I don't. You know,
I mean, you don't have to if you don't want to.
Yeah, but the funny thing for me was that once I started doing that, you know, once I started, I got an agent, and in New York City, it was. To get a commercial agent, there were commercial agents and legit agents.
And for those of us who may not know at home, commercial meaning to do advertisements,
television commercials,
television commercials,
exactly.
and legit meaning stage work.
Yeah. Now, New York City, being the money place that it is, it was easier to get a commercial agent. Not easy, but easier.
Okay.
That was the most difficult part of the process of becoming a professional. You know, I had to get in at that time. Now there's two, but 3 unions. Right. AFTRA, SAG, and
Actors Equity.
Actors Equity. You know, and they did not make it easy to get into those unions. So it was a difficult process. Then when you got the unions, an agent didn't want to look at you unless you were in the unions, because the unions meant that you made a certain amount of money if you're working, you know. Right. So to get into those unions, I had to do a lot of work, which I enjoyed. They call it showcases. Yes. Where you work for nothing. Right. You know, and you invite people to come see it. And process goes. But what I wanted to say was there's people that I came in contact with that I really admired and was impressed with, that were really like Warren Beatty. This guy is like, you know, there's a movie called Love Affair, and I had a small part, and I was the bell captain, you know. And I had a scene with him, you know, it was a scene, he has this painting, and he wants to give it to me to hide somewhere in the hotel. And we get on the set, and he says, hi, I'm Warren Beatty. Right. And I said, I'm Jim Pyduck, you know. And for the whole day, he must have said my name 100 times. Wow. Well, Jim's going to do this, and Jim. He was so generous, you know, and I was so impressed with that, you know, that. When a lot of them got onto the place where they were working, it was a job.
Sure.
You know, and we're working together, and you're like a fellow employee, and we're getting to know each other. You know, so I was really impressed with that. You
Very
know,
nice.
and George C. Scott was like that. I went, no, this way, and Jim, you know, and I just love that. You know, that they were like that. So that's part of it. I mean,
Very good.
That's questions.
What was your first professional job?
Well, the first one I made money from was a television commercial. This is funny thinking about it now. It was for New England Telephone.
Okay.
And at that time it was long distance.
Yes.
You had long distance, and they were talking about how cheaper that was long distance for them.
Right.
And it was 3 commercials, you know. And I was working at the time moving furniture. I still had anger issues. So I think I'm kind of settled down with that at older age.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, I worked on that a lot. But I couldn't, you know, one of the things, you know, classic thing, an actor works as a waiter, you know.
Right.
And I got a job as a waiter, and I told them I was the best when I asked to get the job. I said, I'm the best waiter on the East Coast.
Right.
And I had never waited tables in my life, you know. And I went to this, it was an Italian restaurant, and I was okay the first couple of days. And then there was a big holiday came, and the place was packed. And people were snapping their fingers at me, you know, and stuff like that. And there's not enough of this in here. And the other waiters were taking my orders. I didn't know how to do it, you know. And I just walked out.
Oh my!
I had a whole station of people, and I just left with my tips.
Yeah.
And so I couldn't wait on tables.
Okay.
So I worked construction, you know, as a laborer. And at the time, right before I got this commercial, I was working with a moving company.
Okay.
You know, so I got the commercial, and I got to be able to say, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have to render my resignation to this moving firm. You know, so it was a television commercial. It was 3 commercials, and it was a pretty lucrative job.
Oh, nice.
Rehearsal. Oh, and again, part about that was it was the first commercial I ever did.
Oh, nice.
And I didn't know what was going on. And I was trying to. I'm an actor, acting like he knows what he's doing. In this commercial that I'd never been in. I've never been in a commercial. And a couple of times people said to me something about, how many of these things have you done?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can't even tell you how many, you know, it's like. So that was the first professional thing. Again, going back to the commercial and the legit agents.
Yeah.
Getting a legit agent in New York, now it's a little bit different because there's more TV, you know, like Law and Order, stuff like that. But back then, it was like the Cosby Show and maybe a handful of other TV shows. So there wasn't a lot of work. Right. So there wasn't a lot of incentive for these agents to be, you know, signing new people on. You know, so it was a difficult, you know, job trying to get a legit agent.
Well, sure.
So I did. I moved from the commercial agent to a better commercial agency with the idea, like, you know, but you guys have to at least let me audition for legit agents. And I remember this, and I'll tell you again, the show business, film industry thing. I had my shot at this legit, one of the biggest agents in New York. And I came in and sat at this table, and it was like something like from a movie. You know, it was this long mahogany table with all these people sitting at it. You know, these agents, and all the agents from that agency talking to me. And man, I got to tell you, I'm a Taurus, and I'm a very sensitive kind of guy, and I could feel things like a dog sometimes, you know, energy. And I'm sitting there talking, I'm being myself and being like, and one of them said something to me, and I remember saying this, and the words are coming out of my mouth, and I wanted to go like this, you know, because I was just being honest, which is a hard thing to do when you're dealing with these people. And they said something about, and I said, well, you know, I'm not the kind of person that bothers people all the time, is knocking on their doors saying that. And as soon as I, you know, to get the job, you know, I'll go and audition, I'll do the best I can, and then leave. But I'm not going to be like badgering these people, because I just can't do that, you know. as soon as I said that, things started to change, and one by one they started to leave.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't, it wasn't
Wow.
happening,
Oh,
So,
my.
and then I realized later on the other side, now I'm an old man,
Yeah.
that I would have been so unhappy living in LA. People can do it, and they're but going to parties and being just saying what you think they want you to say, and sneaking over here to talk to this one because you know that it's not my style. I just can't do that. So I never got to that big plateau where they said, "Oh, just get us Jim Pyduck,"
Right.
And I can see that it was meant for me. Because
Sure.
then I come out here, and I hate to compare, teaching high school at Prescott Valley to like working in Hollywood, but I would take what happened to me teaching high school in Prescott Valley to the other.
Nice.
Because it was just fit me, who I am,
That's good. So you have done at least 3 shows with PCA since you've been here.
Wow, yeah, what a gift that was to find you guys.
Oh,
And you were the first person I spoke with. I didn't know what I was going to do when I retired, and I submitted a play to direct, and you and I talked, and you said, "Well, we're having a cattle call." It was the first time they ever did it in this room.
Yes, in this very room, right.
And I came here and auditioned for the cattle call, and got cast in
Beauty Queen of Leenane.
yeah. Well,
Yes.
before that,
yes.
it was Lion in Winter.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought Lion in Winter was after.
No, that was first, and
Okay.
then Beauty Queen was in this one.
Right.
Lion in Winter was the main stage.
Yes.
And I got to do the lead in that. It was the
Right.
first thing I'd done in a long time, and I was so happy
Good.
to be
Awesome.
back.
But I know people have been very praising of your work that you've done, including me. What is your, I know you could probably spend 3 hours answering this question, so we'll try to go for the short one, but what is your process? How do you make your choices as an actor while you've got a role and you're in rehearsal?
Well, I'm doing one right now, and Shakespeare, which is probably the most difficult and the most rewarding. I mean, once I did some Shakespeare, I realized there's something about, I don't know how to say this with any kind of modesty, but you get this empowerment. Like, if I can get this down to where I know what I'm saying, and I can get you to understand what I'm saying, and do it in a conversational way, that's pretty big.
Yes, and
for an
that's
actor.
the key to Shakespeare, obviously, and that's what a lot of people miss.
Yeah.
They just think they have to memorize the words, but they have to understand what they're saying.
Yeah. Well, as far as the process,
And the emotion, too.
exactly. The process for me is always the lines. I mean, when I got Lion in Winter, I mean, I had earphones on at the gym, and I had all day long, learning the lines.
Right.
Because once I get those lines, and I'm one of those guys, I got my script rolled up in my back pocket until opening night, just for like
little safety blanket.
safety.
Right? Yes.
So that part, but the other thing is that there is being open again, like I said before, about, I call it the muses, that there's something about theater that in Shakespeare in Love, this guy keeps saying, "Well, how's it going to work?"
Oh, yes.
It just always does.
Jeffrey Rush,
in
right?
theater.
Yeah,
in
yeah,
theater.
yeah.
And if I open up, and let some of that stuff come in, I can go to places I never even knew were possible.
So you allow those choices to happen more in the moment in rehearsal, as opposed to going home, analyzing, and going, "Here's what I'm going to do in the next rehearsal."
Well, I do that.
Okay.
I do that, but then, like what I'm doing now, I started out with this. I'm doing this character. His name is Gonzalo, and he's sort of like a Polonius from Hamlet. He's an older guy, and I'm playing him older than I am, because I'm like as old as dirt already. But I started out with this again, big, and I got this wig, and I'm, I was using that kind of voice with Shakespeare.
Yeah, yeah.
And little by little, I said, this wig feels like I have, I don't know, like, it doesn't feel right. So I got rid of that.
Okay.
And then little by little in rehearsal, this crotchety character started to become this soft, kind of nice guy.
Interesting.
And it was so much easier, than to just go, hey, But I had to go through that process of finding where it was, and I think that happened with being open.
Very nice.
Because that's one of the magic things about theater, that there is magic.
Absolutely. Now, am I correct that Carla Burkett is directing?
Correct.
And
yes.
how
she's
she
terrific.
helped you along that line?
She was very accommodating for it. And just last night at rehearsal, there was, I don't know, this is very esoteric, but there's a scene, and these two guys, the son and the two old, myself and the king are asleep. We get lulled to sleep, you know.
Right.
And these guys are doing this conspiratorial thing where they're going to kill us,
Right.
you know. And we wake up, and I'm talking to the king, and I say, we better draw our swords, because they had told us all this crazy stuff was going on. But during rehearsal, I said, wait a minute, how about if we draw our swords and we draw them like we're going to go after them? Even though we're not, but they're so guilty that they get scared that we're coming out. You know, it's a little moment. It's hard to convey, I know.
Sure.
But again, that just happened last night.
Right.
The scene just changed with a moment, you know, just a different moment, you know.
Yeah.
And that is, let me say this before,
yes.
is part of the process for me, is staying in the moment.
Absolutely.
I've heard that so much,
Absolutely.
but it's so true.
Oh, it is absolutely true. In grad school, I had an acting instructor who had a phrase I'd never heard before, but it stayed with me, is being dropped in.
Oh.
I think it was still pretty much akin to being in the moment.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, just allowing all those things that you're talking about that you're pulling from here and letting them come into and just dropping into
to
the
what's going
character,
on in
right.
that moment with
being
you and
right
the other
there.
actor or the
just
actors,
being present on the stage.
Yeah.
Absolutely. What attracted or inspired you to start teaching?
Well, I'll tell you. We just we just honored 9/11, and the real 9/11 happened, and I was working in New York.
Right.
And working as an actor, you know, it's all about, it's me, you
Of
know,
course.
and just the way it's just a part of the
It's the
beast.
nature of the business,
Where am I
absolutely.
auditioned? Where do I
Right.
go? Who's
Right.
this? Who's in town? I'd be walking down the street in New York and see like the buses, you know, filming something. I didn't even hear about this. Like, you know, so it's me. 9/11 happened, and I don't know, it was just another piece of something that I realized that I needed to do something a little more important. And teaching was, I substitute taught at a Quaker school.
Oh,
And I just loved it. These kids, it was a middle school, and these kids, I just loved it. It was like that moment of finding theater, you know. I just loved this teaching thing. I said, I've worked as an actor for so long, you know, they'll just be happy to get me as a teacher, but I had no credentials to teach, you know, so I had to go back, as I said, this long slog to get my certification to teach. And I wanted to say something about what I would say to the kids about, but I can't remember what it was.
Okay, it'll come back. What is your what accomplishment are you most proud of as a teacher?
Well, probably the last thing that I did. You know, we called ourselves, you know, Prescott Valley. You know, I love it, but we called ourselves Poverty Productions because we, you know, the first show I did there was Our Town, and everybody had a piece of my clothes on stage. All the guys, you know. There's my turtleneck, there's my other turtleneck, there's my other.
Right.
So, you know, that's the way it worked for a long time. And as far as accomplishments, people have different, I'm not putting anybody down.
Sure.
I would never do anything like High School Musical. I did these classics from the 40s, like The Man Who Came to Dinner, You Can't Take It With You, Arsenic and Old Lace. And the kids just didn't know anything about those things, and they loved it, and they were terrific.
Awesome.
So all the way through, I did classics, but the last one, my last play that I did there, we went all out. We did a fundraiser, and we rented costumes, and I did Taming of the Shrew.
Oh, very nice.
And we did it, I saw a version of it from 1975
With
or
Mark
74.
Singer. Yes.
Yes.
done very commedia dell'arte. Oh,
which
what an
supposedly
awesome-
that's how he wrote it.
Right.
With
What
the
a
old man
great
turns, like
production
bends
that
over
was.
and it's like,
Yes, yes.
all those sound effects.
Yes.
And we did it that way.
And the moment where, I don't remember who the female playing Kate was, but at one point, Mark Singer just picks her up over his head like that. It was just magical.
And it's all these little pop things.
Yes.
And, you know, these.
Yes,
And
and
we
I
did
think
it like.
the couple of the other suitors maybe were wearing masks or
Yes.
something with big long noses.
Yeah.
And what a great
Yeah,
production.
and
that
I got a
was,
bunch of new, like, kids who were in intro, and they were the ones with the masks,
Right,
and they
right.
came out in the beginning, and they're looking all around, you know, and, you know, so, and I got them in the I'm sorry, I get
No, it's okay.
And then I did this, and then I said,
No, it's all right.
I put them on the scaffolding, and they were watching the play
Oh,
for the whole
awesome.
thing with those
Very
masks
nice.
on, you know, so they got to do something,
Right.
even though they were new to theater,
Right,
you know.
right.
So, but it was an amazing production.
That's great. That's awesome. You've done television and film. What are the differences between the two of them, and how do they compare for you to stage work?
Well, just to put it in context, the union thing, getting an AFTRA, which was American Federation of Television, Radio, yeah.
Something, yeah.
That was the easiest one to get in because you could pay your way into that
Oh,
one.
okay.
You know, SAG, Screen Actors Guild, was hard.
Sure.
But the hardest of all was Actors Equity,
Sure.
which is the stage union. And what I noticed through my career as an actor, for me, stage was what that was the blood.
Sure,
that was
of course. I
all
think
I wanted
most
to
people
do,
would
but then
come
you
up
had to
with
do
that
other
answer.
things to make money
Right.
to be able to do that.
Right.
But in the community of theater, of acting, if you were an actor who was in Actors Equity, other actors respected you, like the ones who were, in Screen Actors Guild and
Right.
stuff like that. And it was a completely different thing. I mean, you can get Hulk Hogan, which God bless him, but you get Hulk Hogan and have, a minute scene or 2-minute scene and have him do it 75 times.
Right.
You can get him to do it,
Right.
but
Sure.
we have to be on stage for like 45 minutes to an hour and a half sometimes without a break. Just
Right.
doing it, that's real theater.
Absolutely.
So still is to me.
Right. But is there an inherent difference between television and film? I would assume television is very fast-paced, whereas film is a little slower paced, perhaps?
Oh yeah, and of course the budgets. I
Yes.
mean, there's all that stuff with it. But the film I did when Law and Order first started, it was just called Law and Order. And I did a bunch of episodes of that. I was the bailiff announcing the court cases. I'll tell you really fast
Yeah.
one about this one. The guy who I talked about, Warren Beatty, that was the norm for me. I met these people like that.
Right.
There was a young actor who just died recently of an overdose,
Oh.
and he got to be really, really, really famous. And when I was working with him, he was a young guy and he was in a gang. He was a teenage gang.
Oh, my.
And we were filming down. They would film that. I don't know if they still do. They would film it actually down at the court district, New York. But to do it, they had to film it between midnight and 7 a.m. So they could use the courts when no one was using them.
Right.
So they actually used the court. But the problem is, New York, things are open 24 hours
Yes.
a day, except down there.
Right.
Because there's nothing down there at nighttime.
Right.
So it would close. So I still smoked cigarettes then, and I'm working with this young guy who became, like I said, as he got older, he became a very, I don't want to say his name because he's passed on.
That's okay.
Because I'm not going to say something good about it.
Yeah.
He's, I was still smoking cigarettes then, and we had a break, and there's nothing open. And I got no cigarettes, and I look all the way in the back, and he takes out a pack of Marlboros, opens them up, pegs one out, and puts it in, and I walk in the back, and I said, "Excuse me, man, can I bum a cigarette from you?" And he goes, "Oh, this is my last one, man." And I had a resentment against that guy for that cigarette thing.
Wow.
For like 15 years. And then I finally let it go.
Wow. Interesting. What attracts you to roles? And I'm sure we're pretty much talking about stage here because you have more
Yeah.
opportunities to choose your roles
Yeah.
on stage than you do in film and television. So.
Well, I was lucky, I think, because that 6 years that I did that basic training in the Society Hill Playhouse in Philadelphia, I did everything. They did plays that were weird. They did like English plays and Irish plays and stuff like that. I loved doing the Irish plays. I still love them, you know, because somehow I hung out with guys who were Irish, and the Irish accent always attracts me, you know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But what I'm trying to say is that 6-year period, I got to do a lot of different roles, so I consider myself a character actor. So I didn't care if it was the lead or this, but the character work got to be really interesting to me, you know, so that's pretty much what it was.
So do you look for any kind of particular traits in characters that attracts you to go out for them, or they just seem like they're fun and interesting? Or
well, you know, to be honest with you, there's not a whole lot of choices. You know what I mean? You're directing a play coming up, Barefoot in the Park,
right?
And of course, I'm way past being able to be the guy, you know,
right?
But this young lawyer, but there's a crazy guy who lives upstairs,
right?
And that really attracted me,
right?
You know, this guy. So I'm going to come and audition for that.
Very good. Is there anything that you would like to do artistically that you have not been able to do yet, or have not had the chance to do yet?
Well, one of the dreams I think of every actor is when you get to be this age and this far. You know, the journey for me has been like, yeah, I've been in theater all this time, but then, you know, but I've been getting older all that time too, you know. So I'm old now and I've been in theater for a long time. That the dream is always to have your own theater, you know, to have, not that you're in charge of everybody, but to have some freedom to do things you want to do, and you're the guy. Like you don't have to pitch something to someone else, you know. So running a theater would be. I've always looked, you know, when living in New York, I go upstate New York and see a barn. I feel like Mickey Rooney. Use that barn, and we could do a theater. We could do a show in there.
There you go. Awesome. What are the significant differences for you working in the 3 levels of theater, academic, community, and professional? Do you have a preference? You touched on it a little bit, but...
Yeah. I have to say, at this point in my life, professional would probably be third.
Just because of the stress and
and
having to do it 24/7. And
yeah, the thing about community theater, which, you know, we're working here, is that it happens all the time. It's happened to me all the time that in theater, more than anything else, you become a family when you're rehearsing, because it's like us against them, not against, but we have to take care of our, like, you know, you got something over here, you don't want them to see that, you know, or, you know, that you just become a family, you know, and in community theater, I find that to be even more so.
As
you
do
know,
I, absolutely.
There's a guy who's filming this right now who I just met like last year, and every time I see him, I'm so happy to see him, you know, and I don't even know him that well, you know.
Yeah, I think there's no question that whether it's professional or community, though, I think there does seem to be in the community more of that family feeling sometimes than in professional. But you're all focused on the same goal, which is to get this show as best as it can be.
Play is the thing.
And you're all going to open on the same night. You're all going to be there on the same night. So there is definitely that camaraderie.
And the thing, you know, if I have to keep in my mind, the play is the thing from Shakespeare, that, you know, just recently in audition, in the rehearsal process, there's always something, you know, that comes up that's a little uncomfortable, and I don't like confrontation. So I'll just say to myself, I don't need to be right, but the play is the thing. You know, it's the most important thing. You know, sometimes you have to find out how to get what you need without being so confrontational. You know?
Absolutely. Couple more questions, and then we'll open it up to the floor. Do you have any fun or juicy stories related to your life in art, your work either on the stage, film, or television, especially Law and Order, or Conan O'Brien? Anything fun that happened that you are willing to share?
Well, I told you the one about the cigarette.
Yeah, that was.
But there was one, and this is back in my, you know, my journey has been like I was a wild man, and a lot of people in theater are
Yes.
crazy people, and,
Right.
but I was really crazy, and I got cast as John Proctor in The Crucible, and I would go out with my buddies and stuff, and right before that we had done Dylan Thomas, Dylan, and one of my best friends played Dylan, and I thought this guy was just an amazing actor. We went out drinking, doing the pub crawl in Philadelphia,
Right.
and then after we always never had enough, so we went to the after hours clubs, So we go to this one after hours club, and who walks in but this critic, from one of the local newspapers. And he starts saying something about my friend Dennis, who played Dylan. And, at this point, you got a skin full, and it's like no rational thinking or anything. And I said, are you talking about him? He was amazing in that. And we got to the point where we were going to go outside.
Wow.
And probably fall down because we were all drunk, But I was like, at his throat,
Wow.
Then I get cast as John Proctor. And who comes to audition? Who comes to review the play?
Of course.
But that guy.
Right. Of course.
And
of course.
to his credit, I
Yeah.
mean, he let, he had no animosity.
Maybe
or
he didn't
anything.
even remember the incident.
But they said so-and-so's here to review the play. And, oh man, this has gone down the tank right now. Forget about it.
Absolutely. One last question before I open it up to the audience here. Recently, you've had some health issues.
Oh.
But thankfully, you've come through all of it.
Yeah, I'll
You
talk
wanna
about it.
just
You know,
touch on
it
it
was,
a little bit. And how has it affected your art, or has it?
Well, all right, I'll tell so very quickly. I had prostate cancer,
Right.
and had an operation, major surgery, and there was still cancer there. So then I had to do this other stuff. Then I had to do radiation, and I think it's gone. But
hope.
it was close to like it really was that one day at a time thing, where I wasn't sure how much time I had left, and I still don't.
Right.
But I mean, it was real immediate
Yes.
then.
Yes.
And the joy was that my daughter came from Philadelphia and took care of me for 2 weeks,
Oh,
which,
very nice.
if I talk about it, I'll start to cry.
Yeah.
But, so that was the benefit of that. And that kind of, I got lifted out of that. I got cast in The Odd Couple, and I'm one of the card players, and I don't know what was going on, but I just could. So I had, had to go to the emergency ward because a normal blood count level is like 90.
Right.
Mine was 675.
Yes, I remember that. Holy cow.
Yeah, so I almost died,
Right.
So those were both in 2014. I was in the hospital 2 different times. And I don't walk around every day going, whoa, my life has changed, cancer changed me,
Right,
but
right,
I do, it's definitely part of who I am
Sure,
today.
of course
that
it is.
I've gotten through that, and who knows what's going to happen later, but I'm healthy. I go to the gym and I eat.
That's excellent.
I was right before I came here. I was making juice from vegetables, which I never did before. I was eating cheesesteaks in Philadelphia, but so it's making me, forcing me to eat correctly. So I feel very blessed.
Yeah.
And now, I have gratitude, a lot of gratitude. And for me, gratitude is like an action thing where I all during the day, I'm saying thank you. Thanks for this. Thanks for little things, like I'll say just to myself. And
Well,
this
it's very
thing.
easy to take these day-to-day things for granted, and it's very easy to take for granted just waking up in the morning and going through your day and not thinking about it's another day that you have.
Well, how about this? I'm working up in Maine, and I teaching school 30 miles away, and I get in the car, it wouldn't start. And I just went insane, ballistically angry. I'm sorry.
Right.
It came, and I'm like,
Yeah, right.
I called AAA. They were there in 10 minutes. The car was fixed, and I'm driving to work. But as I was driving to work, I went, man, oh man, this car started probably about 1,500 times.
Right.
And once it didn't start, I was like screaming.
Right.
So it made me think, I don't like every time I start my car say, thank you, car.
Right.
But it put it in perspective of how I can go,
Absolutely.
like there's so many good things that are going on that are just basic things that I don't, but since this little thing, I think I recognize them a lot more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very good. So does anybody here have a question they'd like to ask of Jim? We have a small audience here, but
And if you don't, that's fine.
no? Anything?
I haven't known you very long anyway, but I think you're a great actor, I really do. You mentioned something about your daughter coming to help, but you didn't say anything about being married and how that relationships, how they suffer or how they're enhanced by the arts here.
Well, I don't know if it's part of theater or what, but I've never had it. I joked a little bit earlier. I said I've been married 20 years to 4 different women. So I haven't had relationships. Just are not. I don't know if it's my parents or like the role, whatever. My first wife was my daughter's mother. Was a neighborhood girl, as I was a neighborhood guy, and in the neighborhood you start going out with her, she's friends with that one, and then you got engaged, they got engaged, we went to their wedding, we went to our wedding. It was real South Philly, like you see in movies sometimes, with like Goodfellas or something, But I was totally not ready emotionally, and I'm not making any excuses. That was a dent in my spirit, my soul, when I left, and I left my daughter, and I spent decades trying to get her back, and I think I've succeeded. She came to take care of me for that 2 weeks, and when we were leaving, we held each other, and she just said, "Dad, it's different now." And it took something like that. Why does it have to be cancer to make it work? Like it was the cancer that, this curse that made something beautiful happen too. Our relationship. So I don't know if I answered the question with that.
It does pretty much. I mean, there are problems with. I've been married a long time, but you have rocky times when you're trying to have a steady relationship and then also do what we like to do so much.
Yes.
Theater,
Yeah.
Theater.
Because it takes a lot of theater, to me, acting, especially in directing, which is there's something else. Going to a job where I work doing tech work or which are all great things, but theater pulls your emotions into it. I mean, I'm doing a play where I'm killing somebody on stage, or I'm doing whatever. It's emotional. And then I go home and I can't just shut that off like that. So it's baggage, and that person's innocent. My spouse or my partner, they want to have a relationship, like you said. And I got to tell you, I have so much respect for you personally, and knowing now that you've been married for 52 years, to me is just amazing.
It's amazing to me too.
You're a happy guy, and your wife seems happy too, and that's an amazing thing. I don't know how you do that.
I just want to make a comment. I want to thank you for taking your experience and your passion to students, because I've been involved in theater, visual arts as well as performing arts since I'm a teenager. And this teaches kids things that they cannot learn from books or from sitting in school 4 or 5 hours a day. It teaches them respect for others. It teaches them they have to show up because there's 20 other people waiting for them. It's not about me. It's about this family, even if you never see them again. And I think anyone who teaches, like yourself and Bruce, are to be commended, because it's an incredible learning experience for children of any age.
Yeah, another gift that I was given to me. I have 2 poster boards in frames in my house, and they're unsolicited. Each one of them, a kid from 2013 and 2012 wrote me a note on these things. Mr. Pie, they called me Mr. Pie, and I'd say 75% or more. You changed my life. Now, I changed their life because I was able to, teach them that it was about integrity and hard work and learning the lines and sharing and all that kind of stuff that I was taught. So that was a huge, huge thing for me. Gift.
Absolutely.
That's a question, Jim. Thanks for sharing your experience with us, and I really enjoyed it. And as you know, you and I are both survivors.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was an honor for me to, fill in for you at August.
Yes. Interesting, yeah.
And but for kind of new actors like myself, I've been acting since 2000. What philosophy have you studied the most and have learned the most from, like Stanislavski or Rita Hagen or
Yeah, it's funny. Stanislavski was My Life in Art is like a famous book of his, and that's what this thing is called. Well, to me, I take from a bunch of different things. But what we talked about earlier about the guy from Yale, who was that guy, but that's a lot of, there's some validity in that, working internally and finding things, But if it's just that, then I think you limit yourself. That there's so many different schools of acting, that I think are important.
Yeah, I have always told my actors, whether they're 17 or 71, is I don't care how you get to where you go. If I ask you to get somewhere and you stand on your head and cluck like a chicken and that makes you get there, I don't care. Doesn't matter to me. But it's a really good question that you ask, because I don't think there is one answer to that. Acting is, you can certainly learn skills. You have things that you can take with you in your imaginary, skill tool chest of acting. But a lot of it is who you are, where you come from. That's why I was asking Jim earlier about how do you make your choices. Those things tend not to be just gifts from the universe. You really have to work and make a decision as to what you're going to do. And that's what rehearsal is for, is to find out whether or not those choices will work or not.
And work is the thing.
Right.
Ilya Kazan, one of his biographies, talked about how when he first came to New York, or first started working in theater, this is the 30s, he would do everything. Stage manager, assistant stage manager, take a small part here, working in theater. And being on that stage is the best teacher,
Oh, yeah.
Schools, classes, all that stuff. When you're actually working with the director in a play, that's the best.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
This
This
was
has been
wonderful.
fun,
We're out
yeah.
of time, and thank you all for coming. We really appreciate you being here. We hope you'll be with us next month. We will be interviewing another thespian. Melanie Sepecki will be our next guest. So thanks all for coming, and hope next time you'll come down and be here with us.
Thank you for the tech people, too. Yes.